What happens when a Hollywood legend walks into what should be a friendly morning chat show, only to have the conversation take a sharp turn that leaves everyone in the studio speechless? Today we're breaking down the moment Emilio Estevez had enough, and trust me, you need to hear exactly what was said that made him walk off the set. Before we get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me your thoughts on this whole situation. So let's set the scene. The Today with Jenna and Friends show has been running for about 3 years now, and it's become known for its lighthearted, fun approach to celebrity interviews. Jenna Martinez hosts alongside her rotating panel of friends, and today, it's co-host Rachel Kim and contributor Marcus Thompson sitting with her. The show typically covers everything from upcoming projects to fun personal stories. Nothing too heavy, nothing too controversial. That's exactly what viewers were expecting when Emilio Estevez was announced as a guest. Estevez was there to promote his new independent film, a passion project he'd been working on for the better part of 4 years. The movie deals with immigration, family separation, and the human cost of policy. Heavy stuff but told through a personal lens. From the moment he walked onto that set, you could tell this project meant something deep to him. He sat down, shook hands with everyone, and the interview began. Jenna opened with the standard questions. She asked about the film's premise, what drew him to the story, how long it took to get funding. Estevez answered thoughtfully, explaining that this wasn't just another movie for him. It was something he felt compelled to make. He talked about the research, the real families he met, the stories that broke his heart. The tone was sincere, maybe even a little vulnerable. Rachel chimed in with a question about working with the young actors in the film, and Estevez lit up talking about their talent and dedication. Then Marcus asked about the challenges of making an independent film in today's climate. Estevez nodded, saying it's harder than ever to get these kinds of stories funded and distributed. He mentioned that streaming platforms want franchises and algorithms want predictability, but some stories need to be told regardless of market trends. It was a measured response, not angry, just honest. That's when Jenna decided to pivot. She leaned forward with a smile and said, "You know, Emilio, I think what's interesting is that you come from this Hollywood dynasty, the Sheen family, all this success, and yet you're out here making these small, independent films. Do you ever feel like you're trying to prove something, like maybe stepping out of your father's shadow?" The studio got quiet. You could see Estevez's expression shift, not dramatically, but enough. He took a breath and replied, "I don't really see it that way, Jenna. I've been making the films I want to make for over 3 decades now. This isn't about proving anything to anyone. It's about telling stories that matter to me." Jenna laughed, but it had that edge to it. "You know the one," she said, "right? But you have to admit, there's something about being Martin Sheen's son and Charlie Sheen's brother. That's got to create some kind of pressure, some need to carve out your own identity separate from all that." Estevez shifted in his seat. "I changed my name back to Estevez specifically because I didn't want to trade on my father's name. I've been Emilio Estevez my entire career. I think my work speaks for itself." Marcus jumped in, maybe trying to lighten things, saying, "And what incredible work it's been. From The Breakfast Club to Bobby, you've built an amazing career." But Jenna wasn't letting it go. "Sure, but let's be real, Emilio, your brother Charlie had a much bigger career, at least in terms of mainstream success. Does that ever bother you? Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd taken more commercial roles instead of going the independent route?" You could see Estevez's jaw tighten. He looked directly at Jenna and said, "I'm not sure what you're trying to get at here. I came on this show to talk about a film that highlights real human suffering, real families being torn apart. And you want to talk about my brother's career and whether I feel overshadowed. That seems like a strange priority." Rachel tried to intervene, saying something about how both brothers have had success in their own ways, but Jenna cut her off. She had that look in her eye like she'd found something and wanted to dig deeper. "I'm just asking the questions I think the audience wants answers to, Emilio. People are curious about family dynamics, especially in famous families. And honestly, when someone makes a hard pivot away from mainstream success, it makes people wonder why." Estevez leaned back, folding his arms. "A hard pivot? I directed Wisdom in 1986. I've been directing and producing for almost 40 years. This isn't a pivot. This is a continuation of the path I've always been on. And I didn't come here to be psychoanalyzed about my family relationships." The tension was thick now. Jenna glanced at her co-hosts, then back at Est. "Look, I don't mean to offend you. I'm just trying to have an honest conversation. Your family has been in the news a lot over the years. Your brother especially with all his public struggles. Doesn't that affect you? Don't you ever feel like you have to distance yourself from that chaos?" That was the line. Estevez sat forward, his voice measured but firm. "What does any of that have to do with the film we're supposed to be discussing? You're asking me about my brother's personal life. You're asking me if I feel overshadowed. You're turning this into some kind of tabloid segment when I'm here to talk about immigration policy and human rights. This is exactly what's wrong with media today. Everything gets reduced to gossip and cheap shots." Jenna's smile faded. "That's not fair. Emilio, we're trying to have a real conversation here. Are you? Estevez shot back. Because it seems like you had an agenda before I even sat down. Jenna looked genuinely taken aback by that last comment. She blinked a few times, trying to regain her composure. An agenda? Emilio, that's a pretty serious accusation. We invited you here in good faith to talk about your film. Then let's talk about the film, Estevez said, his voice steady but clearly frustrated. Let's talk about the family and the story who gets separated at the border. Let's talk about the 8-year-old girl who doesn't see her father for 3 years. Let's talk about the system that treats human beings like numbers. That's what I want to discuss. Marcus nodded enthusiastically. Yes, absolutely. Let's talk about that. Emilio, can you tell us about how you approached telling such a sensitive story? What was your process? But before Estevez could answer, Jenna interjected again. I think we can do both. Marcus, we can talk about the film and also acknowledge the context of who's making it. Emilio, you've been in this industry your whole life. You've seen how it works. Some people might say that you making a film about immigration is somewhat performative, especially given your privileged background. How do you respond to that? The studio went dead silent. Rachel's eyes went wide, and you could see Marcus physically recoil at the question. Estevez stared at Jenna for a long moment before responding. Performative, he repeated, his voice low. So what you're saying is that because I grew up with certain advantages, I'm not allowed to care about social issues. I'm not allowed to use my platform to tell stories about people who don't have one. That's your position. Jenna raised her hands defensively. I'm not saying you're not allowed. I'm saying that some critics might view it that way. I'm giving you a chance to address those potential criticisms. What critics? Estevez demanded. Who specifically is saying this? Or are you just couching your own opinion as something you heard from unnamed sources? Jenna's face flushed slightly. I'm speaking generally about the conversation around privilege and activism in Hollywood. It's a valid discussion. It absolutely is a valid discussion. Estevez agreed. But that's not what you're doing here. You're using it as a weapon to undermine the work itself. You're suggesting that because of where I come from, my concern about human rights is somehow less genuine. That's not journalism, Jenna. That's cynicism masquerading as insight. Rachel tried again to steer things back. Emilio, I think what we all want to know is what you hope audiences take away from this film. What's the message you want people to leave the theater thinking about? Estevez turned to her, his expression softening slightly. Thank you, Rachel. What I hope is that people see these individuals as human beings first. Not as political talking points, not as statistics, but as mothers and fathers and children who are trying to survive and build better lives. I hope it opens hearts and minds to the reality that these policies have real consequences for real people. That's beautiful, Rachel said, and you could tell she meant it. But Jenna wasn't done. Though you have to admit, Emilio, the film does have a political angle. You can't make a movie about immigration policy without it being political. And given the current climate, some might see this as you taking sides. Estevez closed his eyes briefly, as if summoning patience. Art has always been political. The Grapes of Wrath was political. Schindler's List was political. Selma was political. Telling human stories that intersect with policy is not the same as partisan propaganda. The film doesn't tell people how to vote. It tells them to see the humanity in these situations. But you must have a personal political stance, Jenna pressed. Are you comfortable sharing where you stand on immigration policy? No, Estevez said flatly. I'm not, because that's not what I'm here to discuss. My personal politics are irrelevant to the story in this film. The minute I make it about my beliefs, it stops being about the people whose stories I'm trying to honor. Jenna leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. I find it interesting that you're being so defensive, Emilio. These are standard questions. Every filmmaker who tackles political subject matter gets asked about their perspective. Defensive? Estevez's voice rose slightly for the first time. Jenna, you've spent the last 15 minutes asking me about my father, my brother, whether I feel overshadowed, whether my concern for human rights is performative, and now you're trying to box me into declaring my political affiliation on live television. You haven't asked me a single substantive question about the actual content of the film. Not one question about the cinematography, the script, the performances, the score, nothing. Just personal attacks, dressed up as interview questions. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Emilio, I'd love to hear about working with your cinematographer. The trailer looks visually stunning. Thank you, Marcus, Estevez said, clearly grateful for the lifeline. We shot on location in 3 different states, and we really wanted to capture both the beauty and the harshness of the landscape. The cinematographer, Lisa Chen, she brought this incredible eye to the project. We used a lot of natural light, long takes, really tried to immerse the viewer in these spaces. That sounds amazing, Marcus said. And the young girl who plays the daughter, she's remarkable in the trailer. Where did you find her? Estevez smiled for the first time since the interview took the turn. Maria Gonzalez. She'd never acted before. We held open casting calls, and the moment she walked in, we knew. She brought such authenticity and emotion to the role. Working with her was one of the highlights of my career. Jenna cut in again, her tone sharp. and I'm sure it makes for a great story. Discovering this unknown talent, very Hollywood of you, very convenient for the narrative. Estevez's smile disappeared. What exactly are you implying now, Jenna? I'm not implying anything, she said coolly. I'm just noting that it's a very traditional Hollywood redemption story. Established director finds unknown talent, gives them their big break. It's been done 1,000 times. There's no redemption story here because I don't need redemption, Estevez said, his voice hard now. And yes, giving opportunities to new talent is something that happens in this industry. But you're saying it like it's somehow cynical or calculated. This girl gave the performance of a lifetime. She deserved that role. I'm proud to have been part of her introduction to audiences. I'm sure you are, Jenna said with a tight smile. That's when you could see something shift in Estevez's demeanor entirely. He sat very still for a moment, then looked directly into the camera, then back at Jenna. He spoke slowly, deliberately. Jenna, I want to understand something. What is it about this film, or about me being here, that's bothering you so much? Because this stopped being an interview about 10 minutes ago. This is something else entirely. Jenna's expression hardened. Nothing's bothering me, Emilio. I'm doing my job. I'm asking questions that I think need to be asked. If you're uncomfortable with that, maybe that says more about you than it does about my questioning. Your job, Estevez repeated. Your job is to ambush guests with personal attacks. Your job is to make actors defend their right to care about social issues. Your job is to reduce every conversation to gossip and gotcha moments. Nobody ambushed you, Jenna shot back. You're a public figure who chose to make a political film. You don't get to hide behind art when it's convenient and then claim you're being attacked when someone asks you direct questions. Direct questions. Estevez's voice rose. You asked me if I was trying to escape my father's shadow. You asked me if I was jealous of my brother. You called my concern for human rights performative. You mocked me for casting an unknown actress. Those aren't direct questions, Jenna. That's a hit job. Rachel put her hand on Jenna's arm. Maybe we should take a breath here. This is getting heated, and I don't think anyone wants that. Jenna pulled her arm away. No, Rachel. He came on this show, he agreed to an interview, and now he doesn't like the questions. That's not my problem. Marcus spoke up, his voice cautious. Jenna, I think Emilio has a point. We've gotten pretty far from talking about the actual film. Maybe we should refocus. Stay out of this. Marcus, Jenna snapped, not even looking at him. Her eyes were locked on Est. You want to talk about the film? Fine, let's talk about how you, a wealthy actor with every privilege imaginable, decided to tell the story of marginalized people. Let's talk about whether that's your story to tell. Let's talk about whether you consulted with actual immigration advocates, or if you just decided your Hollywood perspective was enough. Estevez's face went red. Now you're questioning whether I did my research, whether I consulted with the communities I'm portraying. You didn't ask me that. You didn't give me the opportunity to explain the 2 years I spent working with immigration attorneys, with families who've been through this, with advocacy organizations. You didn't ask because you don't actually care about the answer. You care about the attack. I care about accountability. Jenna countered, I care about calling out privilege when I see it, and what I see is another rich Hollywood actor thinking they can solve the world's problems with a movie. I never said I was solving anything, Estevez said, his voice shaking slightly with anger now. I said I was telling a story. That's what artists do. We tell stories. We shine light on things that matter. I'm not claiming to be a savior or a hero. I'm claiming to have made a film that I believe has value, and I'm questioning that value, Jenna said coldly. That's my right. It absolutely is your right, Estevez agreed. But you haven't seen the film, have you, Jenna? You're sitting here questioning its value, questioning my motives, questioning everything about it, and you haven't even watched it. How can you possibly critique something you haven't experienced? Jenna paused, just for a second, and that told you everything. I've seen the trailer. I've read the synopsis. I've read reviews from the festival circuit. So that's a no, Estevez said. You haven't seen it. You're basing your entire attack on a 2-minute trailer and other people's opinions. That's your journalism. That's your accountability. I don't need to see it to ask valid questions about your approach, Jenna insisted. Yes, you actually do, Estevez countered. If you're going to sit here and question the value of the work, the integrity of the work, my motivations for making the work, then yes, you need to have actually engaged with the work. Otherwise, you're just performing your own kind of theater. You're pretending to be a serious interviewer while actually just trying to create a viral moment. The studio was completely silent except for their voices. You could see crew members in the background frozen, unsure what to do. Rachel and Marcus looked like they wanted to be anywhere else. Jenna's face was flushed now too. A viral moment? You think that's what this is? I'm trying to hold you accountable, and you can't handle it. You're used to everyone in Hollywood patting you on the back and telling you how brave you are. And the minute someone pushes back, you fall apart. I'm not falling apart, Estevez said quietly. But there was steel in his voice. I'm calling out exactly what this is. You invited me here under false pretenses. You told my publicist this would be a friendly conversation about the film. Instead, you've used this platform to take shots at me, my family, and my work. And the worst part is, you're doing it while claiming some kind of moral high ground. The moral high ground? Jenna laughed, but it was harsh. That's rich, coming from someone who spent his entire career benefiting from nepotism. That was it. That was the moment. You could see it in Estevez's face. The exact second he decided he was done. He stood up, slowly and deliberately, removing his microphone. Nepotism, he said quietly. There it is. That's what this has been about the whole time. You resent that I come from a family in this industry. You resent that I've had opportunities. And instead of engaging with the work on its own merits, you've decided to make this personal. Jenna stood up to, I'm making this personal. You're the one who can't handle basic questions. Basic questions, Estevez repeated, shaking his head. You know what a basic question would have been? Jenna, what inspired this story? How did you find your cast? What do you want audiences to feel? Those are basic questions. What you did was something else entirely. Then leave, Jenna said, gesturing toward the exit. If you can't handle the heat, walk away. Prove everyone right about privileged Hollywood actors who can't take criticism. Estevez looked at her for a long moment, then at Rachel and Marcus. I'm sorry you two got caught in the middle of this. You both asked good questions. I wish we'd had more time to discuss the actual film. Then he looked back at Jenna. And as for you, I hope whatever you were trying to accomplish here was worth it, because what you've done is ensure that anyone watching this will remember your hostility far more than anything about the film we could have discussed. I'll take that risk, Jenna said icily. Estevez picked up his jacket from the back of the chair. He draped it over his arm and turned toward the camera one more time. To anyone watching who's interested in the film, it's called Borders of the Heart. It opens in limited release next month. I made it because I believe these stories matter, regardless of what happened here today. Rachel stood up quickly. Emilio, please, maybe we can restart. We can cut this segment and begin again. I really would love to hear more about the film properly. Estevez gave her a sad smile. I appreciate that, Rachel, I really do. But I don't think that's going to work. The tone has been set. The agenda is clear. There's no resetting this. Marcus stood as well. For what it's worth, man, I think what you're doing with the film sounds incredible. I'm sorry this went sideways. Thank you, Marcus Estevez said, shaking his hand. I appreciate you trying to keep things on track. Jenna remained standing with her arms crossed. So you're really doing this? You're really walking off in the middle of a live interview? I am, Estevez said simply. Because staying here and continuing this charade doesn't serve anyone. It doesn't serve the film, it doesn't serve me, and frankly, it doesn't serve your audience. They tuned in to hear about a movie, and instead they got a spectacle. They got honesty, Jenna countered. They got real questions instead of the usual softball garbage that celebrities expect. Estevez shook his head slowly. You keep calling it honesty, but there's a difference between honesty and hostility. There's a difference between tough questions and personal attacks. You crossed that line repeatedly, and when I called you on it, you doubled down. That's not journalism, Jenna. That's ego. My ego. Jenna's voice rose. You're the one who couldn't handle a challenging interview. You're the one running away. I'm not running, Estevez said calmly. I'm making a choice. I'm choosing not to participate in whatever this is. And before you twist this into some story about a fragile actor who can't handle criticism, let me be very clear. I've been in this industry for over 40 years. I've done hundreds of interviews. I've been asked tough questions about my work, my choices, my family, all of it. And I've always engaged, always answered honestly. But this wasn't that. This was something else. And we both know it. Rachel stepped between them slightly. Emilio's right, Jenna. This got out of hand. We should have reined it in earlier. Jenna turned on her. Don't you dare take his side right now, Rachel. We're supposed to be a team. I'm not taking sides, Rachel said firmly. I'm saying that as your friend and co-host. This wasn't our best moment. We can admit that. Marcus nodded in agreement. Yeah, Jenna, I think we need to acknowledge this went to a place it shouldn't have. Jenna looked between her two co-hosts, then back at Estevez, then at the cameras. You could see the realization dawning on her face that this wasn't playing out the way she expected. Fine. If everyone wants to pile on me, go ahead. I asked hard questions. I refused to do the typical celebrity puff piece. And apparently that makes me the villain. Nobody's calling you a villain, Estevez said quietly. But you weren't asking hard questions. Jenna, you were trying to provoke me. There's a difference. A hard question would have been asking me about the challenges of representing a community I'm not part of. A hard question would have been asking about the ethical considerations of telling these stories. A hard question would have been about the impact I hope the film has on policy discussions. Those are hard questions. What you did was try to bait me into an argument. And you took the bait, Jenna said, but there was less fire in her voice now. I did, Estevez admitted. I defended myself and my work. I'm not apologizing for that. But I also know when a conversation has become unproductive. This is that moment. He started walking toward the exit. Rachel called after him. Emilio, I'm really sorry. I hope you know that. He turned back and nodded. I do, Rachel, and I appreciate it. Jenna's voice cut through one more time. You know what the worst part of all this is? You actually might have a good film. You might have something important to say. But now, all anyone is going to remember is you walking off our show. You did this to yourself. Estevez stopped and turned around slowly. No, Jenna, what people will remember is why I walked off. They'll remember a host who was more interested in creating conflict than having a conversation. They'll remember someone who used their platform not to enlighten but to attack. And they'll make their own judgments about whether my choice to leave was justified. I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with it too, Jenna said, but her voice wavered slightly. Good, Estevez said. Then we're both comfortable. He walked off the set. You could hear his footsteps echoing as he moved through the studio. The camera stayed on Jenna, Rachel, and Marcus standing there in awkward silence. Jenna sat down first, her face unreadable. Rachel and Marcus exchanged glances before sitting as well. Marcus cleared his throat. Well, that was certainly unexpected. Rachel looked directly at the camera. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have our cooking segment with Chef Antonio. The show cut to commercial, but the damage was done. The internet exploded within minutes. Clips of the interview were everywhere. People dissected every exchange, every word, every facial expression. Some sided with Jenna, saying she was right to ask tough questions and that Estevez overreacted. Others defended Estevez, arguing that Jenna crossed a line and turned what should have been a film promotion into a personal attack. The debate raged across social media, on entertainment news shows, in think pieces and blog posts. But one thing was certain, everyone was talking about it. The interview became one of those cultural moments that people reference, that gets analyzed and reanalyzed. Borders of the Heart, the film that started all of this, ended up getting more attention than it ever would have from a standard promotional interview. Whether that attention translated into ticket sales or meaningful conversation about immigration policy, well, that's another question entirely. What's clear is that the dynamic between celebrity and media, between hard questions and personal attacks, between accountability and hostility, remains complicated. This interview became a flashpoint in that ongoing conversation. Both Estevez and Jenna made choices that morning. Choices about how to engage, when to push back, and when to walk away. Those choices had consequences that rippled far beyond that studio. So what do you think? Was Jenna right to push Estevez the way she did, or did she cross the line? Was Estevez justified in walking off, or should he have stayed and continued the conversation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure you hit that subscribe button, because we're going to keep bringing you these kinds of stories that get people talking. Let me know, do you think celebrity interviews have become too soft, or was this an example of going too far in the other direction?